Familiar with DARPA, right? It's the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, a mouthful.
They added the D.
It gives you the resonant frequencies.
Roy, an advertising executive who became a Secretary of Defense, he said he went to Congress to get the funding, and he said this agency is going to create the vast weapon systems of the future. That is what DARPA does. They are always 20 years ahead of anything that you or I know. So any technology that is like, what the hell was that I just saw and you're not supposed to have seen, that's DARPA. Right?
They were doing Neuralink in the 90s, right?
They are always doing things 20 years before you know about them, because they do what is called blue sky technology.
Blue sky
right?
research and technology.
Yes.
In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day. Human mind can be altered. In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior.
Of innocent citizens being controlled by government-sanctioned experiments? Is Cheryl Welch telling the truth, or are her claims absurd? Just another conspiracy theory that's impossible to prove? Maybe. But not if you listen to Nick Begich.
I think there's some good evidence that Cheryl Welch and many of the other people I've spoken with have been victimized by this electromagnetic mind control experiments. The weapons of this century aren't bombs and bullets and ordnance, but electromagnetic energy targeting the human being, which is a greatest revolution in military affairs since gunpowder.
Begich is an expert in government mind control. He is convinced the Pentagon has mastered a technology once thought to be science fiction, the ability to broadcast information directly into the human brain.
Our government began spending a lot of time looking at how to modify behavior of human beings. Going back to the Korean War, in fact, in a publication, Low Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, they have a chapter on electromagnetic weapon systems, being able to not just to debilitate someone, but actually even to stimulate certain activities within the brain.
But how?
HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which started as a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy. This is a very large array or field of antennas based in Alaska, radio frequency antennas.
HARP antennas transmit powerful radio signals into the upper atmosphere to study the effects on wireless communications. But Begich says HARP can also be used for more sinister ends.
HARP has announced several other programs and campaigns, and there's two areas that I got very concerned about. One was weather modification applications. The other was the effect on human beings. If you can modulate a signal that the brain locks onto, recognizes, and begins to mirror or follow the frequency following response. The brain rhythms change, then it creates a chemical cascade within the brain and the emotions change. Now the resolution gets finer and finer and finer. And it used to just to be about triggering emotions. You could change people's brain chemistry pretty readily, change their emotional state pretty easily. But when you get down to the idea of thoughts and being able to manipulate those, that requires a different kind of sophistication.
Can we hear sounds?
Designed to interact with the human nervous system in order to remotely pick up on someone's neural network or EEG, and not only receive that and monitor it, but manipulate it and place it back into the victim to control their emotions or control their actions or bodily functions, for that matter. The other more recent term we have for that is EEG heterodyning or EEG cloning. The difference between EEG heterodyning and EEG cloning would be, let's say, me remotely receiving your EEG and then duplicating it and putting that in another person to give them your same thoughts or feelings or physical reactions. EEG heterodyning would be receiving your EEG, manipulating it to put it back inside your head to give us a desired physical reaction or emotional reaction.
With external fields of all kinds. For radio frequency, you can look at the Radio Frequency Dosimetry Handbook, 1986, University of Utah, produced for the Air Force. It gives you the resonant frequencies for each vital organ so that you can send in a radio signal that will couple with the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, and cause them to malfunction so that you can degrade the performance of your adversary. The new weapon systems being developed today will attack the mind, the body, and our physiology on an energetic level. Not with bullets and bombs. It's a perfect Republican weapon. No offense to Republicans here, but you don't want to destroy the property. You're going to have to rebuild it afterwards. This is a weapon systems of the 21st century. It's the very beginning of it in a lot of ways, but the research goes back over 50 years.
My name is Dr. John Hall. I'm a medical doctor from Texas. As I understand the memorandum from the President, it's for you to determine if current legislation is adequate in protecting individuals and if there's any ongoing experimentation. In reviewing the common rule, it's very obvious that there's a lot of loopholes to informed consent. All of the horrific experiments you've mentioned, Willowbrook, MK Ultra, radiation experiments, mostly were done without informed consent. They were funded by the DoD and intelligence agencies, where I'm not even so sure you would know if there's an IRB, much less if an IRB is looking at informed consent. As a physician, relative to some of what you're hearing today, in the community, we are seeing an alarming rate of complaints of use of electromagnetic weapons. Microwave auditory effects, silent sound spectrum, EEG cloning, which has taken the lab out of the laboratory and into the home. Most of these, from the research that we reviewed, can be done remotely. It seems to be more weapons research than medical research. I personally corresponded with upwards of 1,500 victims, all complaining of identical complaints from every state in the nation of being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing radiation for the use of cognitive control or behavior control. I've submitted a paper to you, and there's another paper submitted to each member from another physician in Kansas City alluding to the same thing.
You do that, you can control them using neuro-linguistic programming techniques. You're rewiring their thought processes and brains. And so this gets into what's called offensive information warfare. And they used it, I believe, in the Gulf War. You can call it a eugenics program even. But also walk them to their, they want to see if they can, hyper game theory. How do you, they want to see if they can manipulate people to do things that are irrational, but also walk them to their death. And so you can call it a eugenics program even. And they need to sample all cultures, language throughout the world to define their probability matrices of which tricks, techniques, deception works. So how do you control a brain? Most people don't believe that. Well, you can't control me. I have my own free will.
V2K, or voice to skull. This involves the projection of voices, noises, and music directly into my mind to communicate with me in real time and at the speed of thought. And it also includes the manipulation of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions in the person's mind. Additionally, the targeting is all highly perverted and sexual, as well as just
It is dramatic. It's somebody trying to end my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting, disgusting, disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through weapons. I don't know. I don't care.
This is a common breakdown tactic of belief systems and the human will. In no-touch torture, the techniques are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their minds. And vice versa.
They use these monarch-style torture programs, like it's based on sex and trauma. So they're gonna traumatize you. They're gonna use your libido to get back at you, and
this technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal.
Experience what is referred to as malodorance. This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat of planted dreams and form of torture. They coordinate the voice. I really mean extreme. I experienced an entire night with forced spontaneous orgasms repeatedly all through the night, one right after another, with maybe around 1 hour of sleep or so, as I lay immobilized in my bed.
In my mind, I can hear my own voice. I told them I'm going to make you pay for all of the years of torture that I've taken, and all you are going to me and my family. Ben said the slaves began a program of perversion. First was with my dog. I am very playful with my pet, and suddenly one day that I was petting him I felt strange, in the sense of the word. I thought, this is strange, and then afterwards that strange sensation continued. Then in that moment I realized that was impost, so I thought, look at this losers, don't know how to put me down, and they are doing this. So I told them that I know what you are trying to do, and I started laughing, and then I said again out loud, you'll never take my will, ASS, so just to show them that I meant what I said, I kept playing with my dog, and even though that attacks continue, I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use of people, better said young people, also children and homosexuals. When I aggravated them I used able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts and images and imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
I also often see highly disturbing pornographic images and videos, including highly disturbing pedophilia type of images and videos when I close my eyes.
You might guess that this person developed delusional disorder. This is a paranoid schizophrenia. But first of all, nobody develops paranoid schizophrenia in the 50s, in their 50s. This is, if you haven't developed it by 30, it's not. Then this technology exists. These nefarious programs exist. And it's hard to imagine for a person that why would you do something like this? But if you think about the new type of warfare,
cognitive warfare.
Exactly. It's a cognitive warfare. You don't have to kill people that you are fighting against. You can just degrade their brain. You can,
you alter their minds.
Yeah, alter their minds.
Personalities.
And it's like Chinese torture. I mean, okay, so.
Mrs. Marshall?
Recently apologized. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today.
I am currently a speech-language pathologist working in private practice with young children. I had a 7-year-old client who has autism, and she was the most significantly affected of all of my clients. I eventually had to tell this client to go to another clinic, and they used her to threaten the most torture in me as well as their most extreme forms of torture. For several months, she would cry and scream horribly during our therapy sessions despite having a great day at school. This was highly unusual behavior for her, as she usually behaved very well during her therapy sessions. I observed her gasping for air a few times in the same way that I do when I am being more severely suffocated. The suffocation had been in a mild state for a while up until this point. Many of their torture methods are cyclical in severity. Right after I saw this child being suffocated, then I began to experience very extreme suffocation all day, every day, for about 2 months straight, and that's also when they made it worse when I eat. Then I also work with a 4-year-old little girl with Down syndrome, as well as her 5-year-old sister who also has Down syndrome. I observed both of these girls suddenly grabbing their genitals in pain and verbalizing, "ow." I observed this at least on 1 or 2 occasions for each of them during their separate sessions. During one session, I observed one of my 3-year-old clients suddenly grab his crotch and lean forward in his chair. And then he made a frightening grimace of severe
and have had a decent education. I live in El Dorado Hills, California, with my wife of 14 years, Lorna, and our 5 children. Nicole is 15, Patricia 14, Christopher 13, Dylan 9, and Avery 16 months old. Not only have I been going through this, but my entire family has suffered right by my side. We have all experienced the same type of harassment on different levels. We have all suffered the same symptoms while this harassment was going on. Some of our physical symptoms include severe tooth decay and vision loss, unexplained rashes and burns, severe headaches, mood swings, anxiety, thyroid problems, high blood pressure, heart problems, vision loss, and cancer. Two of my children were born premature, which I attribute to this. Our son Dylan, now age 9, was born very premature. He was born at 31 weeks. During her pregnancy with Dylan, we were being targeted more so than other times. At the delivery, there were weird men walking and waiting around the hospital. Right outside our delivery room window, there was a white cargo van parked with 2 suspicious men inside. They were there the entire labor, a delivery. Our son had to be transported to another hospital 45 minutes away. When arriving to the Toa hospital, those same men and van were present. Three of my children have severe rashes that have not been explained by several doctors. These rashes have been present for several years at a time. If interested, I will gladly furnish you with detailed photos of the rashes. Our infant daughter, at 3 weeks old, was diagnosed with Lerner's syndrome. This was after a severe rash appeared on her body after a few days of torture. We were told by a couple doctors to take her home and love her and spend the rest of the time we have with her. They told us she would ultimately die from this syndrome. Thank God that Lerner's syndrome was not what affected our daughter. Doctors are still dumbfounded by her rash and symptoms. Sadly, we know that her symptoms were effects from the torture this poor innocent 3-week-old baby endured.
Why? Was a mentally unstable individual.
Is it that when they're going through these like
Jonathan, do we know most sensitive of its workers and contractors, some with top-level security clearance? Not only are these very serious accusations, but investigators say some of the people involved were handling the nation's most sensitive secrets, potentially making this a matter of national security. Chief Fox Report correspondent Jonathan Hunt with the news. Appalling story, Jonathan. Do we know more about these people and their security clearances?
Well, we don't know their exact job titles, John, but what we do know is that they did appear to be working, some of them, at high levels across a range of government agencies. Take a look at this, for instance, the National Security Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, and the very secretive Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Others also work.
Two-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was simply fired. One employee purchased sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. One employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. Not sure what actions, if any, were taken by him. One contractor arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent. I think that you mentioned that. Posing as a child, he had his contract revoked. One CIA staffer was charged with child sexual crimes, and the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. But sexual crimes involving children, says BuzzFeed, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies that handle sensitive information. In a November 2009 report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees America's spy satellites, acknowledged viewing images of child sexual abuse during polygraph examinations. This is so disturbing. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that is happening in the general evil?
Allie, we're told, and when I was put through recruitment into the intel community, you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into Congress, and Congress needs to launch a brand new church committee, number one, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number two, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting behind
the CIA raping children and sexually assaulting children? and they're not being prosecuted? Where are you?
Has come under investigation for links to the proliferation of graphic material. Called Project Flicker, some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DoD-affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DoD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security sweeps. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those individuals who are being recognized as the ones who are perpetrating this.
So Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is the co-author to this bill. She said this, quote, the notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace and one we must fight head-on. Now, the fact that the Pentagon workers, be they civil or military or otherwise, already submit to a gauntlet of daily scrutiny just going in and out of work, is it fair then to the tens of thousands who are completely innocent to further allow that much more government intrusion into their digital devices or the things that they're dealing with on their computers?
Well, remember that what's being talked about here is not an intrusion into someone's personal device or even their home. This is about saying Department of Defense computers are being misused to share, to spread, to access child pornography. And when you step into an office, whether it's a Department of Defense office or it's the offices at RT America, wherever you go into an office, you do not have the right to simply use the technology within that office space however you want. And you certainly don't have the right to use it in a criminal manner. So essentially, this bill is trying to
is a shameful disgrace, and one we must fight head-on, Spanberger said in a statement. According to child pornography watchdog Internet Crimes Against Children Child Online Protective Services, the Defense Department network consistently ranks in the top tier of Internet service providers for trafficking child pornography. It ranked 19th of nearly 3,000 networks surveyed in 2018. Meadows said the legislation.
Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into
and go a food courtin'. More